Hi, everyone. It's Susan again. I'm coming back to you with now the Gemini full moon, and this will be a sign by sign update. So you can check for your sun or moon or rising sign. And do keep in mind that there's already a general full moon assessment up on my channel. I posted it a couple of days ago, and it tells you a little bit more about this full moon. One of the things I forgot to mention in my excitement around how it was connecting to the kind of upheaval that was going on Twitter at the time is that this full moon connects back to the solar total eclipse that we had on December 4th of 2021. It was at 12 degrees of Sadge, so close to this point. Go back in time, reflect on your life last December, almost a year ago exactly, and also go back to June of that year. So June the 10th of 2021. So pretty much again, almost a year and a half. When eclipses happen, remember that they have a very long cycle, and then something comes back to repeat. So in this case, that was in the Sagittarius Gemini axis that we were having eclipses. Of course, now we're having them in the Taurus and Scorpio axis. And so keep that in mind as you listen to your sign, whether it's sun, moon, or rising sign. And do think back about a year from this point, back into December, early December 2021, and back into June of 2021, and see what was going on in your life and how it's manifesting now. And of course, as always, you can extrapolate into the world around us and see what was going on both last December and in June. And then another thing that I wanted to mention that wasn't mentioned in the Gemini full moon video, in the general video, is that Mercury, Venus, and Mars are all out of bounds. And this means that they've gone above the point at which the sun moves either north or south of the equator towards the Tropic of Cancer, or in this case, towards the Tropic of Capricorn. And so we're in this out of bounds kind of energy, which is extreme. Keep that in mind as well, because that means that the planets tend to act in an erratic and extreme way, according to, of course, the theme of the placement and sign that they're in. So a lot to take in. It's a very heavily charged week, not just the full moon, but the whole week. Although, again, I do think that in an individual life, these things tend to pan out in far less dramatic ways than they do collectively. So certainly don't be worried about what might be coming up. Just be alert, take care. And let's have a look first at what's going on with Aries. Aries, this is happening in your third house. The full moon will be taking place in the house of your communications and your skills, the willpower, how you use your talents in this world. Keep in mind that Mars is right there on this moon. Mars in the third house, especially in Gemini, is quite possibly sarcastic and can be very cutting. And especially with the moon there adding to the emotional nature, do be careful how you manage your conversations, how you manage your communications, how you manage your relationships with your siblings or cousins, potentially the people around you. Just keep that in mind, because there can be a tendency to exaggerate or fly off the handle anytime that Mars is in the third house, but especially when it's conjunct the moon and in Gemini. And of course, we have the opposition. So any opposition is always going to require some kind of adjustment, some kind of compromise, some kind of choice. And this is happening in that third house, ninth house axis. So there may be some aspect of your life that is about thinking in terms of, how does my day-to-day reflect my greater intentions for my life, my greater purpose? This can also be where Mars gives you some inspiration or a desire for things to change based on something you already know. Mars is retrograde. Whenever Mars is retrograde and we're talking about communications or the way we're thinking particularly strongly for you in this third house, then we're also looking at perhaps a new way of looking at things, and maybe some idea has come to you based on what you already know from the past. This could very much be with regards to your career or your status in general, because the ruler of this lunation is Mercury, and that's found now in Capricorn, just moved into Capricorn in your 10th house of career and status. So there's some thinking around that might have you reflecting on things. It might be something that you're finding a newfound energy in, taking care of. It might be that you realize that actually you really do need to get to work on a new skill or developing something that maybe before was something you were hesitating on. Now it's a choice point. Maybe you need to speak up around certain things, and this is the time to speak up. Just bear in mind that the emotional energy with the moon there could have you speaking from a place that is much more emotional and much less rational. Mars in Gemini is very impulsive, and you might come across as potentially irrational and impulsive, more emotional than you really want to. So this could be something to keep in mind if you need to have a conversation. Draw on that more conservative energy of Mercury, which is that Capricorn determination and drive that will give you a bit of the sense of how the propriety, let's say, how you need to go forward in whatever this choice is for you. Now, Jupiter, of course, is ruling the Sun and Venus at this time because they're both in Sagittarius at the time of the full moon. And Jupiter is in the last degree of your 12th house in Pisces. So there looks like there has been a reflection on something to do with your sense of spiritual life. Or, of course, the 12th house and the 9th house both correspond to foreigners and foreign lands and going abroad. So do think about that as well. It might be that there's something new that needs to change, a new way of seeing that situation that only now you're realizing and getting momentum. It's kind of like an awareness that you're getting at the time of this full moon. And again, it's not new. It's not something fresh and out of the blue. This is something that is coming back to you. It's something that either is coming back for revision or it's coming back from a place of already having considered all of these things. Bear in mind what was going on in the early part of December of 2021, at the last eclipse that was happening there around the 4th of December. That was happening in the sign of Sagittarius, so in your 9th house. So these issues may have been very prominent for you, and it's being triggered by this full moon. And then go back into June of 2021, and that was roughly where we see this lunation in Gemini at 19 degrees. There was a solar annular eclipse. That means there's a ring of light around the sun. And that was happening on the 10th, but really that whole week around the sort of early to middle part of June of 2021 to be significant, give you some details about what you're going through now. So have a good long think about all of those things, because something here is asking you to communicate about it and maybe reset something in terms of your goals, your aims, because these are houses that have a lot to do with our short-term goals, our long-term purpose, and our overall sense of kind of connection to what we're here for in life. So good luck with all of that, Aries, and I'll see you in the next video. Taurus, this lunation is in the 2nd house and 8th house axis for you. This is a lot to do with money. That's certainly not foreign to you. And bear in mind that also we've got the ruler of this lunation, Mercury, which is in the 9th house for you in Capricorn. And so there might be something here to do with a sense of values, a new realization around values. When you have Mars in the 2nd house, there's quite a lot of thinking about money. That's already been since last August. It continues all the way through the end of March. It's not new. And because Mars is still retrograde, we can see that this is something that you're reviewing or that's coming back. And it's just kind of like a realization now. When we see the opposition between the sun and the moon, we see that there's a tension that requires perhaps choice or compromise or some kind of adjustment. Maybe Mars is showing you the direction there. It could be showing you where you're not taking action. And this is kind of reviewing that. What am I needing to do that I'm not taking action on? That can be also with regards to family. Of course, it's everything that sustains you and supports you in this life. It could even be as something with regards to your diet or your lifestyle as well. The 2nd house being around food as well. Although I do tend to see this, given the other planets, I see this as much more about you taking action on your values, taking action on how you relate to money. The sun, of course, in the 8th house is ruled by Jupiter in the 11th. Those are, again, money houses. So the second and eighth axis is all about money. It's your money as opposed to somebody else's money and how you share resources. And then the 11th house is the money you earn from the thing that you do. It can also be your goals, long-term goals and your wishes and dreams. Mercury is also in this house of your sense of purpose. So Mercury's ruling this lunation, Mercury ruling Gemini. And so the story really seems to be very centered on much more around that long-term money stuff, values. Maybe it's about investment. Second house is about your money and the stuff that you have, and the eighth house is very much about investing that or taking benefit from investments that you've made. And so there's definitely a story to be reviewed here. It looks like your work is cut out for you. Do go back to about a year ago, early December of 2021, there was an eclipse on the 4th of December, and that eclipse was happening at 12 degrees of Sagittarius. And so that was happening in this eighth house, very close to this lunation. It's being triggered by this lunation. And so this full moon axis for you is very much to do with whatever was going on that was stimulated early last December. And then if you go back to June, there was a solar annular eclipse. That means the annular is the one that has the ring of light around it. And so this was on the 10th of June, but that whole week, a few days before and a few days after, is activated by this lunation. It was at 19 degrees of Gemini. Keep that in mind as you go forward from this full moon, because there's a lot of information here that seems to reflect back on what was going on a year ago, a year and a half ago, what needs to change in terms of your values and the money and all of those big questions that I've just outlined. It's a big year of change for you, Taurus, because anyway, you've got the nodes and Uranus moving through your first house. So it looks like there's some really important big step to take here. Possibly in standing up for yourself or protecting your wealth and whatever feels like creating safety for you. So I wish you well with all of that, and I'll see you in the next video. Gemini, this is, of course, all about you. This is your full moon this year. And this full moon is triggering in many ways the passage of Mars that's been going through your first house since last August. So I don't know how you're managing with that. I hope you're doing well. That is challenging when Mars stays so long in the first house. You might find that you have a tendency towards inflammation or some kind of irritability, whether that be psychological or physical. Usually those two things are linked. So do take care of that. Take care of your health. If there is any trigger or any sign that that might be happening for you, take care of your words as well. Be very, very careful. If you're speaking with a loved one, speaking with an important business partner, with Mars on this moon, you could end up sort of flaring up. You could end up with this kind of feeling that something has really come to a head. It's exposing some aspect of this relation because it's in your first house and seventh house axis. Something about relationships. You do have Venus that's been cruising through your seventh house, so that's quite nice. Venus, of course, just like Mars, is out of bounds, and so neither of them are working sort of predictably. They can be a little bit fly off the handle with this energy, or let's say a lot. And of course, Mars in Gemini anyway tends to be very impulsive, and of course, when it's retrograde, it is also even stronger. Now the moon is highlighting something, so count to 10, make sure that you're clear what it is that you feel that you need to stand up for, but also be clear what it is that you might be exaggerating or what it is that you might be blowing up well out of proportion that might not serve you in relationship or that might burn bridges. So do be careful of that. Something here is connected to the eighth house because the ruler of this lunation, Mercury, is in Capricorn now, just the first couple of degrees of Capricorn in the eighth house in your chart. So there's been quite a lot of shifting in your eighth house, of course, since Pluto moved in there at the end of 2007. That's not really new for you, but Mercury is there. So there's some element of this potential dispute or this potential conversation that needs to happen between you and an important somebody else that is about shared resources, maybe about something to do with you transforming the way that you manage your resources. That could also come through your partner, whether it be life partner or business partner, and how they are managing money. Again, just bear in mind that you might be a little bit hot-tempered and this could possibly blow up into something bigger than you really need it to be. Go back in time to last June. So on the 10th of June, there was a solar annular eclipse that happened roughly at this point where Mars and the moon are colliding in your sign. And it was at 19 degrees of Gemini on this annular eclipse. That's quite a significant eclipse. It's one of those eclipses where you see a ring of fire around. That's why it's called annular. That's something to think about. So June, first week of June into the middle of June in 2021 would have been extremely significant and somehow related to what it is that you're needing to revise or reflect upon now. And then in the same vein, go back to December, the 4th of December, 2021, because at 12 degrees of Sagittarius in your house of relationship, there was a total solar eclipse. So something there was going on. Perhaps with some of you, there was a relationship challenge, maybe some of you divorcing or getting married, and then that required some kind of adjustment in your house of shared resources. That's the only thing I can see tying into that Mercury there. Of course, there's a lot of different things that can look like, and that will only concern a few of you. It depends on your natal chart, but keep that all in mind. At the same time, the ruler of the Sun and Venus, which are in your 7th house, is very helpfully back in your 10th house until the 21st of December. So this could be something also to do with contracts that you have to negotiate around work. And again, it could be marriage because 10th house is your status, it's social status, married, divorced, et cetera, et cetera. It could be around, having children, not having children, all those things can be seen in that 10th house. Whenever Jupiter goes in there, it tends to be good, tends to be working in your favor. And so there's definitely a highlight here. And so again, there's something here that can be with regards to money and relationships. So do take things slowly. Don't respond instinctively or impulsively. Take some time. I think Mercury in Capricorn, as the ruler of this lunation, is asking you to go slow and steady and consider carefully all of your options. So good luck with this, Gemini. And Cancer, this is happening in your 12th house. So we're having the full moon show up in the 12th house along with Mars. And it's in that house of the everything that's hidden. It can be your deeper sort of fears and psychology. That can be one of these aspects of the 12th house for you, Cancer, especially because Saturn is moving through another house of challenge, which is fears, usually some kind of challenge to your sense of security or what might be available to you through other people. And then, of course, the Sun and Venus are in your 6th house in that opposition that's creating this full moon. Oppositions are always choice points. It's about how you choose or needing to compromise, for example, needing to find some kind of adaptation to a situation that doesn't feel comfortable because, of course, Mars is right there. Mars, especially retrograde, is really not comfortable, especially in Gemini. So in the 12th house, it's often to do with unconscious stuff, I would say, even more so because of that Saturn there calling us back into the 8th house, looking at our deepest fears and looking to transform all of that. And then the other aspect of Mars retrograde at the moon is that it can be where you start to notice that there's something that you're doing or a way that you're thinking, a way that you're behaving that might undo all of the good intentions that you might have. This could be anything to do with addictions. Again, that depends on your natal chart. That's not, of course, for everyone, but we can also be addicted to arguing. We can be addicted to all kinds of things. It's not like you have to be chemically addicted, but look at those patterns. I mean, in my case, because I'm also Cancer rising, so this is very strong for Cancer risings, and then to a certain degree, Sun and Moon, especially because Moon always affects Cancer. That's our ruler, so we're always wanting to know what the Moon is doing. So in my case, I'm finding myself incredibly impatient, like just really incredibly impatient. I found myself yelling at my dog the other day. And I have this tiny little dog. She's like a Yorkshire Terrier. It's ridiculous. It's like, why am I yelling at my dog? And so this is the kind of irritation I'm talking about. There's something going on, and it needs to be resolved in this sense of what's good for me, what is supporting me, what's not supporting me, how is this interfering in my day-to-day sense of well-being. With Venus in the sixth house, I have to say that gives us a boost, because Venus in the sixth makes us feel a little bit more positive, more uplifted in the day-to-day activities sector, as well as for any kind of potential health issues, physical health issues. But yeah, bear it in mind, because the moon, of course, is always very important for Cancers. Also, go back to December of 2021. There was in December a total solar eclipse on the 4th at 12 degrees of Sagittarius. And that's triggering this point. It's triggering this energy of the full moon. And so something there was brewing, something there was quite significant. Reflect on that. How was that period for you? What changed? I mean, it's a year ago, so it's a long time ago, but do maybe sit down and with your little cup of hot tea, go over with your lovely note paper, Cancer, and write things down, and just kind of let things come back to your mind and attention, because there's something being called on right now. And then also look back to June of 2021. There was a annular solar eclipse, and the annular eclipse is the one that has the ring of fire around it. That's why it's called annular. It's not annual. And so that annular eclipse that was happening on the 10th of June, and keep in mind, days before, days after, this will be affecting things. You see that it's being reactivated again. And so something from June, something from December, really changing things, shaking things up, that is connected to how you're feeling now, connected to how you're dealing with issues that might feel like it's too big for you, maybe too much. You might have that feeling with Mars going through the 12th, that it's just like all too much. Again, with Saturn in the 8th, it might feel like that. But keep in mind, this is all going to shift very dramatically in March. Already when Mars goes direct in mid-January, that will shift quite substantially. So certainly don't despair. Now, one of the aspects of this is that Mercury has moved into the 7th house. That's all about partnerships. It's about important relationships in your life. It could be, business partners as well as life partners. There's something there that's stabilizing this energy, because it's Mercury in Capricorn, which is always a really reliable Mercury. It's not like Mercury in Sagittarius, which is a wee bit all over the place. Mercury is just now moved into Capricorn. So something very solid, very reliable for the next few weeks is there for us in Capricorn, in the house of relationships. And then, of course, you've got the ruler of the sun, Jupiter, which is at the peak of the chart, about to move from the 9th house of Pisces into the 10th house of career in Aries. So the 9th house Jupiter is kind of calling us back in a way to our mission, something that we already understood at the beginning of this year, and was very quickly after that December eclipse triggered in terms of a new inspiration, a new sense of purpose. Now it came back for a few weeks to kind of question all that, sort things out, maybe refuel that fire of purpose, and then go back into the 10th house and bring more of that energy into career. Keep in mind the 9th house where Jupiter is, as well as where this full moon with Mars in the 12th house, they're very strongly linked to foreign people, foreign countries, foreign affairs. Our sense of purpose in life is there, but it looks like there's also something connected to what is going on abroad, potentially. If it's not that, then it can be something that is with regards to higher institutions, for example, institutions of learning, academia, could be more philosophical places. And then, of course, that 12th house being placed from an ashram to a prison, basically. So, anything within that range. And even just the fact that you might feel like, I just want to kind of hunker down with my hot cup of tea and not go out. Fine, no problem. But don't forget that Jupiter's going to ask you to show up in the world very powerfully in your career. In 3 short weeks, you've got Jupiter coming into that 10th house on the 21st of December. So don't hide for too long, because the world is asking you to stand up and do something. So Cancer, good luck with all of that, and I will see you in the next video. Hi, Leo. This is happening in your 11th house and on the 5th house axis as well. So you've got that energy of the lunation that's in your house of friendships and your future goals and dreams. It's a nice place actually, because you might be highlighting something that needs to change. But I think it's adding some kind of energy. It can be potentially conflictual. That depends a little bit how you've been handling this whole Mars transit through the 11th house since August, and maybe there's something that needs to be reviewed in terms of that. Potentially, you need to say sorry to some people around you. That can be that Mars retrograding through Gemini in a social house. There may be something you regret, or there may be a regret that you haven't actually stood up sufficiently, and that you need to actually stand up a little bit more. Not all Leos are really bold and bright. The reputation for Leo only depends on the rest of the chart. I've seen so many Leos who are actually really shy, really self-effacing, and actually lacking in self-esteem. So it's not like you're just always ready to show up on the world stage, although that's kind of what you're here for. Even if it sometimes doesn't feel comfortable, it's kind of what you're here to learn to do. So keep in mind with that 11th house energy that it's Mercury that's ruling this. And so something is going on in your day-to-day life with Mercury just now in Capricorn in your 6th house. And that might have something to do with day-to-day issues with coworkers, something that needs to be organized at work, or it could be something that needs to be kind of re-examined around how you are showing up at work, or how people are showing up for you or not. Or it could simply be contracts with regards to work. There's something that is not working, literally working for you in that sector. Certainly Pluto's been through that sign for the last 14 years, so that's possibly an issue you've had to contend with quite a lot of times. And of course, then we've got the Sun and Venus in the 5th house. That's also regarding children. And so what is going on in this sense of your dreams and wishes may also have something to do with children. That could be potentially your children that you might already have, or it could be children that you would desire to have, and something there needs an adjustment. So remember that anytime there's an opposition, it's all about adjusting to something. It's all about having to kind of work things around whatever it was already established, because this is also Mars retrograding. So I don't think we're talking about something brand new here. I do think this is something being highlighted. With Mars, they're highlighted in a way that puts you in a frame of mind of wanting to take action, wanting to stand up for yourself, or needing to step in. So do be careful also not to burn bridges. It is a social house where this is. Mars and Gemini can be quite scathing, can be quite sarcastic, or cutting in speech, a little too impatient and abrupt in speech. Do keep that in mind, although Venus rules your house of communication, so it's not really your style, depends on your chart. So and then of course we also have Jupiter that is ruling the Sun and this Venus as well in your 8th house, and that is also a house of money. So something around here could have something to do with money that might call back in something to do with either your children or potentially also your day-to-day work environment, day-to-day commitments. Jupiter in the 8th house tends to be very positive. So there may have been something that was owed to you, or that a partner was going through and therefore is now coming through your partner, whether that be business partner or life partner, and you're seeing some results. That could also be just an investment payoff or an insurance payoff, for example. I want to call your attention back to last June. And in June, there was a solar annular eclipse. The annular eclipse is the one that has the ring of fire around it. And that was happening on the 10th of June exactly. Now, again, anytime you have a solar eclipse, Leo, that's your ruler. It's really important. So always keep in mind events that happen, like solar events, solar eclipse, any new moon and so on. You're concerned because it's you that's being eclipsed. It's you that's somehow needing to respond in your energy, Leo, because you're ruled by the Sun. Now, this eclipse was at 19 degrees. It's a few degrees off this particular lunation, 3 degrees off, but it's triggered by this lunation. So keep that in mind. Go back to June, let's say first half of June, very strongly, where there was something already here in this house of Gemini, this 11th house, something was triggered there. I think that's what's being called up now. We're talking about the traces of an eclipse, and those traces, 19-month frame, is because the lunations that come in the future after an eclipse are triggering the eclipse point again and calling in some new information based on what you already know. And so go back also to December of 2021, the first week of December, sort of, there was an eclipse in Sagittarius in your fifth house. It was at 12 degrees, so it's triggered by this sun and moon opposition. And that's something that's being called back up in this energy. So do go back. There's something here that's asking you to pull that understanding from last December and last June 2021, not this year, and pull it into what you're deciding, what you're acting upon this year. So something very strongly activating that 11th house and 5th house axis for you. If it's with regards to children, or for example, an enterprise, this could have something to do with that money house, the 8th house, being benefited in some way. So it could be a resolution of something that you needed to fight for. I hope that's the case for you. Nonetheless, do go back with pen and paper and kind of examine what was going on, and keep in mind for the future, Leo, that anytime there's a solar eclipse, it's really, really important for you to track that and follow it through for months afterwards and see how that's affecting your life. So best wishes for all of this, Leo, and I'll see you in the next video. Virgo, this is happening for you in your 10th house. So it's very, very important for you in terms of career or your visibility in the world. There's something that's showing up there. And of course, the opposite house is the 4th house for you. So that could be that you've had to move, for example, that you may have had to shift your location. Either the location needed to shift because of work, or perhaps because you needed to shift your location, you're having to adjust periodically the way that you're working around that move, for example. It could be also psychological, that you're deciding, I need to change things around how I show up in the world, and stand up for yourself. Now, this is one way that that can show up, because it's Mars here retrograding, colliding, let's say, with the moon up there in the 10th house. And so there can be this kind of decisive moment that has to do with either work or how you show up in your life for yourself, taking charge, because that's Mars in the 10th house. It's ambitious, it's taking charge. That's something that can happen between individuals, between friends, where you need to take charge of a situation and stand up for yourself. And that might be related to something that came up already last year during the eclipses of 2021. So go back in time, go back to June, let's say the first week of June, first and second week, very importantly, especially on the 10th, was when the eclipse was happening. It was an annular eclipse, which is the one where the ring of fire is happening around the moon. So that was at 19 degrees in your 10th house, and that's being triggered now by this lunation. And then the other eclipse was happening in December, and that was at the new moon of December 4th. So the beginning of December right through the middle of December is equally important, and that's with regards to 4th house issues, the Sagittarius house. That is where the sun is right now. So something was going on last year already. This is remember, 2021, not 2022. So go back 18 months and go back a year and have a look at all that was going on, because right now there seems to be some kind of resolution, or there's some kind of choice point that you're in with regards to all of that. Now, Mercury is in your 5th house, and that is the ruler of this lunation in your 10th house. And so it looks like some aspect around 5th house issues, which could be with regards to your personal creativity, self-expression. This is how I see this for you, because it looks like there's 4th house psychological, what makes you feel secure, 10th house, how you show up in the world. That can be vocation or career, doesn't have to be the thing you're paid for. But then Mercury 5th house, that's showing up something in the way that you express yourself. So that could be, again, how you're dealing with authority figures, how you're dealing with people who have authority over you. Now, Gemini is always around friendship as well. Mercury, very much friendship, and 5th house is a sign the house that represents our love and our affection for people and fun and having fun. And so it looks like there's something that needs shaping up there as well. You know, one of the reasons that Virgos tend to be considered very serious types is because or maybe that you take your life so seriously is because Capricorn rules your fifth house. And so Saturn rules that fifth house, and it kind of makes you feel guilty for having fun. So Mercury is here. Maybe he's saying now, okay, that needs to change. Or maybe there's something there that actually needs to be restructured in some way around how you express yourself, how you create in all senses of that word. And then, of course, that can have something to do with relationships, because the other ruler of this is Jupiter, that rules the Sun and Venus in your fourth house, and that's in the seventh house of relationships. So Jupiter is there. Really nice, actually. I mean, super nice energy. So it looks like you're feeling pretty good about what's going on, even if you had to go through a period of conflict. This conflict is coming to a head, or this, let's say, decision or choice point is coming to a head, but somehow it works out for the better because it looks like you've got a lot of support in the house of relationship. So overall, it looks like something really quite helpful for Virgos this time around. I do hope it's experienced by you that way, and nonetheless, go back over the December and then the June 2021 eclipses and see how things were going for you then. You're going to get a number of different things coming up that are resonating with that, and it will close a chapter or help you begin to close a chapter that is something to do with your career and home life, or it's something to do with your sense of security in the world and how you show up in the world. Best wishes for all of this, Virgo, and I'll see you in the next video. Libra, you're having this lunation in your ninth house, and it's in the axis of the ninth house and third house. So full moon in your ninth house is bringing something to light that is probably to do with how you are moving forward in your life in terms of your life purpose and so on. This is a bit of a theme that's going on for months now because Mars has been in that house uh, since the 20th of August. So it's not new. And this is Mars retrograde now. So it's covering old territory. This is where Mars was already back in, you would have experienced this already in late September and October. So that's coming back, bumping into the moon here and showing you something about this idea that you have. Or it could be if you're a student or you decide you want to be a student, this is something that makes you realize something about that requires some kind of adjustment, some kind of decision. It's a choice point. This is now, what am I going to do about this? If this is a legal issue, that's a potential. For example, ninth house can be to do with the law. If there is some kind of legal issue, it does look like it's going to be good. There's a decision, there's something that you're having to do something about, but Jupiter is in your sixth house. Now, Jupiter rules the sun, which is in the third house. That's giving the opposition that creates this full moon. And Jupiter in the sixth house is quite good if you do have any legal issues. So I do hope that's the case for you. It could be something to do with your sense of where and how you should work in life, what it is that you feel like you want to do in that bigger sense of what am I doing with my life. And Jupiter in the sixth is also helping with that. Now, you're going to have that for the next couple of weeks. So this is this last gasp, if you like, of how you can uplift that way of looking at things and how you might want to see that future, because Jupiter is leaving that. And so that third house where we find the Sun and Venus is all about communications. And it's also, of course, about learning skills, learning and doing something in a new way. It can be about siblings as well. So maybe what it is that is showing up for you here has something to do with your siblings, connecting with cousins, siblings, people around you in your neighborhood, or it's about skills that you need to adjust to or acquire to be able to do the thing that you'd like to do. Of course, the ninth house also represents the father. If there is any kind of issue around the father, or maybe there's an issue between siblings and your father, it seems that could also come to a head here with Mars retrograde, especially in Gemini. Do count to 10. If it's with regards to these kinds of issues, then don't burn bridges. Don't let yourself get carried away by old anger, old issues. This is something that has already been there. So you might be better advised to step back a little bit at this time. let yourself process whatever's going on, and then move forward in the days after the full moon and start to take action from that point. I say this particularly because the Mars and Moon that are in the ninth house are ruled by, they're not only in the house of father, but they're also ruled by Mercury, which is in the fourth house of home, family, family of origin, your family now. Fourth house represents mother as well. The moon represents the mother. So maybe it's not your father, maybe it's your mother. But anyway, if there's an issue there, slow it down, um, reflect, and deeply consider before jumping in. Also, go back in time, Libra, because you want to go back to June of 2021. And so that's 18 months ago. And notice that this lunation is triggering the solar annular eclipse that was happening on the 10th of June and any period around that. So, really, the first half of June. And the annular eclipse is the one where you have the ring of fire around the moon. It's not annual, it's annular, which means a ring. And so that was very significant for you in this same axis. It's these same things that are coming up in this Gemini house, the ninth house for you. And then go back to December, so a year ago, at the Sagittarius solar total eclipse, and that was the Sag moon, the Sag new moon, which was showing up this third house area of your life, and is being triggered also by this lunation. So give that a little period of reflection. See how all of this might be panning out for you right now, and what it is that you need to move forward into, what it is that you need to do. It looks like it has something to do with how you operate day to day in your life. But nonetheless, the information is already there. What's happening right now at this full moon is not new. It's stuff that you're aware of. And now the question is, what do I want to do about it? So, best wishes for this, Libra. And I'll see you in the next video. Scorpio, this is happening in the eighth house for you. You've heard me say this a few times because Mars has been in your eighth house, which is your natural house. So it's not an unfamiliar territory, and it's your ruler. And this has been since last August. So if this feels a bit like a broken record, I'm afraid you're going to have to roll with it, because this is really a part of your chart that is being once again really highlighted for you. It's pretty much where your homework is from August until the end of March 2023. So listen up. We've got the moon colliding here with this Mars retrograding. Mars retrograde is very powerful, especially in the eighth house, very powerful. In Gemini, it can be quite harsh in terms of how you communicate with people, how you deal with issues. There can be some kind of feistiness or some kind of disruption. Let's face it, Mars is all about problems. It's not really about the nice things in life. That's where you find you need to kind of stand up for yourself, or struggle a little bit, or find that you have challenges that could be potentially coming from other people as well. And in the eighth house, it's other people's money. It's stuff that comes from other people, potentially around claims like insurance claims or inheritance, or a partner's money. There can be some kind of dispute around maybe how you share resources with a partner. Certainly because Uranus and the North Node have been going through your house of relationship, there's definitely quite a lot of upheaval in that regard anyway. So your house of relationship is anyway being triggered regularly. Again, Scorpio, this may be just one more element of that. So it looks like the money axis is very, very powerfully challenged for you right now at this lunation. The sun, which is opposing the moon and Mars, is in the second house of money. It's what you own, it's your stuff. And that's, again, it's this axis of what's mine and what's yours, what's mine and how do I value that, how do I want to maybe stand up for it, or do I want to share it, and then what is yours and or what is ours, let's say, not yours, what is ours is better to think of it like that, and how do we share that up. And so certainly looks like there's a lot going on there with regards to money. This lunation is governed by Mercury, which is in your third house. Something here could also be with regards to your siblings. It could be cousins, or it could be neighbors, people around you, or even friends. Mercury represents friends. Gemini is all about friends. And so certainly I would say, with all of this triggering here, don't loan money to anybody, friends especially. if you can avoid it, don't get into any kind of money shenanigans with people. Certainly wait. If you have the opportunity, wait. I would wait certainly until Mars has cleared that eighth house to do anything like that. That means 25th of March, 2023. If you do find that you've loaned money or that there's been some issue around a dispute around money, shared resources with somebody else, and it's coming to a head now, be patient in how you respond. Mercury in the third house in Capricorn is quite steady and slow. It's about responding with caution. Um, Take it to heart. Mercury is very correct in the way that it responds, but Venus, Mercury, and Mars are all out of bounds, and things can get a little out of control. So do be careful. Of course, remembering Mars being your ruler, it is very much you. And right now, you also might feel that you're pretty irritated, or there's something rubbing you the wrong way, or something that makes you feel a bit edgy around all of these issues. That can also bring up fears. Of course, the eighth house is very much about our psychological state and fears, accidents potentially that have caused some kind of disruption to your day to day or to your well-being. Yeah, bear that in mind. You do have Saturn in the fourth house of psychology and your sense of happiness and security. So that can have you feeling a little bit down. For some of you, again, it depends on your chart. That's definitely not guaranteed to happen. But Saturn in the fourth can be challenging for a period of time, at least where as it's insofar as it might be triggering parts of your chart that that connect to you more emotionally. You do have a lovely uplifting Jupiter that is now just about to leave your fifth house, and that's the house of fun and joy and love and children and sexuality, all the fun stuff. And so it looks like that has been giving you quite a boost, and it's that Jupiter that is ruling the Sun and Venus. So this is not all doom and gloom. Certainly, there's something really interesting going on here. And of course, Scorpio, because you are this Mars energy, um, it's not like it's something that's out of your domain or out of your capacity to deal with. I also want you to go back in time, go back about 18 months ago to June of 2021. And on June the 10th, there was a solar annular eclipse. And that was exactly where we have this Gemini moon. So it's just 3 degrees off, but this moon is triggering that point. It's highlighting what was going on for you in the beginning of June 2021. And that annular eclipse is something to bear in mind, because it was maybe showing up for whatever is going on right now. That annular eclipse was already triggering. It's already starting. Potentially now this moon is helping you to wrap that up, wrap it up with a determination, with a sense of conviction, because we're talking about Mars here. It's really about being adamant or being quite clear, being quite decisive about something. Then again, go back to December 2021. Early December, there was another eclipse, a total eclipse this time, a total solar eclipse, and that was on the 4th of December 2021, about a year ago. And bear in mind what was going on then in your life and how you might want to reflect back on your money, because again, it's the second house. It's about values. It's about what you have, what you own, and how you value that. Those are going to give you clues as to what you're dealing with now. And so look at all of that in perspective and slow down your response to whatever might be triggered this week. Give it a few days and then take action. Good luck with all of that, Scorpio. See you in the next video. Sagittarius, this is happening in your seventh house. And of course, it's on that seventh house and first house axis. So the full moon itself shows up in your house of relationship. You've got Mars there, and you've had it there since August. So that's been a bit of a flashpoint for you for quite a long time already. And it's going to continue until the end of March. With Mars going retrograde and colliding here with the moon in your seventh house, there could be something in your entourage or very important relationships that is conflicting. There's some emotional conflict or some professional conflict that's showing up for you now. That could be on the part of your partner. You're either potentially angry with the partner or anger, and you're having to soak that up. Sorry about that. You've got Venus in the first house. And so Venus in the first house is definitely helping with this. It's giving you a feeling of, okay, this is all right. I can manage. It's very, very benefic for you. But remember that Venus and Mercury and Mars are all out of bounds, and so they're a little bit more chaotic than usual. Venus in Sag can be a little bit over the top as well. Mars, certainly out of bounds and retrograde, and in Gemini, where it's not really happy, is a handful. Let's face it; it's challenging. This lunation with Mars is ruled by Mercury, which has just shifted into your second house of values, and that also represents money. There can be some issue that is coming up about that might be coming to a head. Maybe that's part of whatever arguments or challenges you might be having in relationships with you with regards to other people. Um, and if that's the case, slow and steady is the key here, because it's a Mars in Capricorn, not allowing yourself to get carried away. And of course, with that Mars in Gemini and Venus in Sagittarius, that could be a risk here. Keep in mind also that the ruler of the sun that's in your first house, your ruler, is in the fourth house in Pisces. So perhaps there's an issue here that is more of a domestic issue that might be with your marriage partner, uh, something to do with your home life, something to do with your family, and that's where the tensions lie. It's maybe not directly related to work, but it's actually looking pretty positive because Jupiter there seems to be quite uplifting, and Pisces is always going to be very strong. It's the other rulership of Jupiter. Hard to say how this is going to pan out for you. All I can say is definitely tone it down if you do feel that there are conflicts building. One way that you can see going back is that if you look a year and a half ago into June of 2021, and that was exact on the 10th of June, but certainly the first half of June 2021, there was an eclipse in this part of your chart, in house of relationship, at roughly this degree. It was 3 degrees off. And so this lunation is triggering that eclipse. So go back a year and a half ago and try and see what was going on. How was all of that shaping up for you? That's a bit of a clue. So if there's any issue here between money or employment contracts or anything along those lines, then this could be what that's all about. Also go back a year ago, because in December, there was a total solar eclipse, and that eclipse was on the 4th of December. So again, roughly the first half of December. Very important because that was in your first house of self. So there's something here that you can really learn from what was going on in June, what was being reflected back to you in December, and what is being highlighted that needs to come to some kind of resolution, or what at the very least is coming to your awareness that is needing some kind of decision. It's a choice point for you when we have an opposition here between Sun and Mars, and especially at this full moon, exactly conjunct the moon. So Sagittarius, good luck with all of that, and I'll see you in the next video. Capricorn, this is happening in your sixth house, and that's the everyday sort of workaday house. That's where your health is as well. We see health or illness there. Do be careful in the sense that you have Mars going through this house. And so whenever we see Mars, especially for a prolonged period going through the sixth house, it's always important to check for inflammatory conditions. Inflammation sometimes is hidden in unusual ways. It can show up as, for example, just being hotter than usual, especially hot overnight. When you're sleeping, you might feel too hot, or you wake up because you're too hot. It can be creaky joints, or it can be just hanging on to excess weight, sort of chronically, that you're not able to shed. And that's a sign of inflammation. And if it's an acute inflammation, which Mars is showing up, it can be migraine headaches, it can be things like that, or it could be lung infections, especially because it's Gemini, which is ruling the lungs, and of course heart. So just always check that first. Check it first. Be sure, be very serious about it, because this full moon is highlighting all of those areas. This is not a really supportive house, and so it's showing up something that needs some adjustment, that is in the axis of health. And certainly with Mars there, we definitely want to take it seriously, because Mars is going to be there for a long time, till the 25th of March, and you'll have time to work on these things. Yeah, keep that in mind. And so the ruler of this nation is in your first house. So it looks like you are the solution to whatever the problem is that's coming up here. That means that you yourself need to step in. You yourself yourself need to take action, how you communicate your needs, or how you take care of all of the things that I've just mentioned above. Um, and of course, you'll do that in your very Capricorn way. It's Mercury in Capricorn, super reliable, super slow and steady, very, very rational. So whatever's going on, if there is some challenge in your day-to-day house, and by the way, it's not necessarily health, it could be, annoying work things. It might be about colleagues or about your peers at work, things that are coming up in your everyday work. It's just like, oh, come on again. And so notice that that's something that might be needing you to step in and adjust. Now, the opposite end of this, of course, the opposition creating this full moon is with the Sun and Venus in your 12th house. The Sun in the 12th house is highlighting aspects of your unconscious. It's also highlighting aspects of your sense of maybe where you recognize that you could be potentially your own worst enemy. Maybe that's what Mercury is trying to show you. The 12th house is our house of self-undoing, and because the ruler of that particular house is in the third house currently, Jupiter is in Pisces, ruling this Sun in Sagittarius. It could be around communication. There's something that is maybe in your style or in your way of communicating at this time, either at work or with regards to your health or everyday life, your everyday day-to-day drudgery, and that's showing up in this way. So I think this Jupiter is certainly very helpful. It's definitely giving you a lift. It's definitely showing you something, and it could show you the answer to that as well. How to potentially soften your communication. When Mars is in Gemini anyway, communication can be very harsh. It's retrograde, meaning even stronger. Plus, you're covering old territory, so this may have been a long burning frustration, and now it's coming to a head, and it's in this house that can relate to your colleagues and employ, whatever. Yeah, all of that is possible. And so just bear that in mind. These things can be a long-standing aggravation. And the other way to kind of check that, confirm, go back in time 18 months to June of 2021, exactly on the 10th of June, but give it a couple of weeks. So the week before, week after, the first half of June, there was a solar annular eclipse. That's one of those eclipses where you see the ring of fire around the moon. And that was happening in this sixth house. So something in June of 2021 was very much highlighting what was going on here in your day-to-day life around health or whatever the issue is now that's coming to a head, because this is highlighting that, going back. Again, I want to really emphasize, you've got to take this seriously. Something needs to change. You're going to have to be quite decisive about it. It's somehow this Mars is making you potentially impatient, or at the very least, I hope, decisive around what's going on. And this is your opportunity. Perhaps don't do it exactly around the full moon, where you might be a little bit emotional about it. Give it a few days. So figure out what it is and then act on it. I'd like you also to reflect on a year ago. You can go back into December, exactly on the 4th of December, but let's say the first and second week of December, very powerfully, there was an eclipse, and that eclipse was in Sagittarius at 12 degrees. So that was in the 12th house. So again, something showing up there that is being triggered by this lunation. Now, again, the 12th house could also be foreign lands, foreigners, and so on. But I see this much more with regards to work, much more with regards to your sense of how you need to intervene, let's say, either in a health issue or a work issue. Either way, I wish you every success in whatever you're doing here, and I'll see you in the next video. Aquarius, this moon is happening in your 5th house. That's a pretty nice place to have a full moon. It's showing up in your house of children and fun and love affairs and all the nice things, and your creativity. It's maybe sparking something around all of that. It is Mars, so there may be some reflection on what has gone before. There can be some antagonism here because it's the moon, of course, your emotions, and Mars, which is all about impulsiveness and patience and needing to take action. It's a strong Mars. Retrograde Mars is very strong, right on the same degree as this moon. And so it could be that there's some kind of tension with regards to your children. with regards, if you're a business owner, for example, this can be something that requires a big adjustment with regards to that. Because it's got this fifth house and 11th house axis quality, the sun is in the 11th house. So there can also be something to do with the organizations that you work with. It's maybe about how you're showing up creatively in those organizations, or some kind of tension that is aggravating you based on that. It can also be the sun, of course, in Sagittarius is showing you a sense of where it is that you want to go in terms of your dreams and hopes for either this period of time or life in general. Venus and Mercury have been there for a while, but now Mercury has moved into your 12th house. And that Mercury is ruling this fifth house lunation. And so there's something in the 12th house which might require some deeper reflection. It might require a little bit of a timeout where you kind of think, well, okay, maybe I actually just need to step away from things for a while. I might need to step away from bad habits as well, where it's showing up, where things have not been working for you. Fifth house can also be with regards to gambling, um, addictions. That 12th house, fifth house energy can be with regards to addictions, for example. And the 12th house is, generally speaking, considered our house of self undoing, which Mercury might just be helping you recognize. The ruler of the sun in the 11th house, Sun and Venus, are being ruled by Jupiter in the second house, which is quite positive. It looks like something really nice around money could be going on, because if this is something to do with the axis of entrepreneurship, for example, then that Jupiter can be really helpful. It's only going to be there until the 21st of December. So this, whatever this realization is, might need to be seized upon relatively soon. But it definitely seems to be giving you a leg up in some way. And I also would like to encourage you to go back a year and a half. So you go back to June of 2021, and on the 10th of June, there was a solar annular eclipse in the sign of Gemini, almost where this lunation is happening. So just 3 degrees off, and the full moon in your fifth house is triggering that. So what was going on for you in the first half of June 2021 is now coming to a head. It's kind of being shown. It's a kind of a resolution point. And the other way of looking at this is going back a year, and the eclipse that was happening in Sagittarius, so in your 11th house, in the first week of December, exact on the 4th of December, is also being triggered by where the sun is right now. So something is highlighting this shift that was quite a big shift for you in this area of life. Look back a year ago and a year and a half ago, because this lunation is kind of summing it all up in a way. It's kind of showing you where the action needs to um, take place. It could be either coming to a head and a culmination, or it could be that now you're realizing what needs to be dealt with, what needs to be done. Either way, it looks like something relatively positive for you, because you do have this Jupiter supporting this money house, Jupiter in the money house, second house, and the sun being in another money house, which is the earnings that you make from the thing that you do. So if this is something to do with entrepreneurship or anything along those lines, this is actually really positive for you. If it is something to do with children, for example, then the Jupiter in the second house can be showing you the need for you to follow your values, follow what you find really important to you in order to resolve what's going on here. Good luck with all of that, Aquarius, and I'll see you in the next video. Pisces, this is happening for you in the fourth house. That's the house of home, but it's also your personal home. It's the foundation of your chart, and that also is with regards to your deeper sort of psychological sense of self, your emotional nature, what makes you happy, what makes you feel safe, a place of security. And so really important for you to maybe notice certain things around this that are being triggered, being highlighted, because Mars is very powerfully conjunct this moon, very virtually exactly conjunct the moon. And the Mars is very strong. It's retrograde. It's requiring some kind of resolution, and that's between where you live, in terms of your physical space, and also how you feel about that, and how you show up in the world. The sun in the 10th house in opposition to that is this point where it's this challenge or this conflict or this choice point that is really being reflected. So the choice is showing up in the fourth house. What do I do about that? And go back in time also to the eclipses that happened in 2021, starting with the June eclipse. The 10th of June, there was an eclipse in this house, the fourth house in Gemini. It was at 19 degrees of Gemini, so just 3 degrees off where this lunation is happening, and it's being triggered again by this lunation. From that point, first half of June of 2021, you already started a new cycle, a process of understanding something in this house. So look at what's happening now, what's coming to a head now, what needs to shift now, or what's being invited to take shape now. And that can have something to do with the Mercury that is moving into the 11th house. Mercury is ruling this lunation. It was ruling those eclipses as well, that eclipse back in June of 2021. And so the Mercury currently is in your 11th house. It's about your future hopes and dreams that might require a bit of revision, or a new potential way of reaching out into that, to a wider social world. It's a house of showing up with friends and groups too. And so maybe this is where you're realizing you need to, and in Gemini, it's very much about communication, of course, as well. So have a look at all of that from that perspective of 18 months ago. Then also go back to December of 2021. And in December 2021, on the 4th of December, there was a total solar eclipse, and that was happening in your 10th house. So clearly something really big is being triggered in terms of career, in terms of your status, in terms of how you feel your what is being triggered for you now is showing up from what was going on already a year ago. um, Review all of that and have a look back and see what it is that needs to change, what sort of action might be required. In this case, that eclipse was ruled by Jupiter. That's where the Sun and Venus are currently in the 10th house for Pisces. And you've got Jupiter in your first house, which is super uplifting. And so your ruler in your first house makes you feel very confident. And it also gives you a sense that now it's me that needs to take charge of this. So Pisces, you are this little Jupiter that we're finding here in the chart, showing up in your sign of self, in the house of self. And and so really what it is for me, this is saying you've got to stand up and do something here. You've got to actually stand up for yourself, take care of whatever it is that needs to be taken care of, and do something here. If there is anything with regards to your mother, for example, mother is in the fourth house, the moon represents the mother. This would, of course, have to be seen in an individual chart. That won't apply certainly to everyone, but there can also be something that is coming up with regards to the mother that requires your attention. That potentially could be a conflict, although this Jupiter energy, it's not looking not really like a conflict, but that there might be something that your mother might need care or attention with. And so the other aspect of this, of course, the fourth house being our sense of psychology and deeper self, the things that we're not always aware of. And with Saturn being in the 12th house of again, that hidden aspect of ourselves, there can be something that's kind of disturbing your peace of mind. That could be, again, a nagging feeling of something that's not really right, that you're finding frustrations building up, and so psychologically requiring some help or some resolution either way. So if that's the case, that Jupiter in your first house will really help you and to take advantage to find a way through that, if that's the case for you, Pisces. Anyway, I do think that overall it's leading you in a new direction with regards to how you feel about yourself. It's certainly a new cycle with Jupiter going through your first house, starting a new 12-year cycle from that house of self. And so this could be something that energizes you and gives you a sense of confidence. Sometimes for people who don't stand up for themselves very well, Mars is bringing the necessary drive and confidence, and it's not necessarily bringing conflict, but just helping you to stand up for something. And so I do hope that that's working in your favor, Pisces, and I'll see you in the next video.